That's what we want. Who cares about our greatest joy are our children, our children.
Thank you.
And fortunately for us, each one of them married somebody very, very special. We have 3 wonderful in-laws and 3 wonderful children. With that comes our 8 grandchildren, each with their own personalities, their own mind, what they want, what they don't want. And then our gorgeous little great-grandchildren. And how fortunate we are to be called great because of our the little kids. And what else can I say?
I still remember when our first great-grandchild was born, Nechama Zissel. Rini got a phone call from Rabbi Lerman's wife, Esther. You know, he's a Chabad rabbi. We said, Rini, this is almost unheard of, 5 generations. There was Rini's mom, who was the first of her generation. Then there was Rini, who was the firstborn of her siblings. Then came Jody, the firstborn of our children. Then came Adam, the firstborn of our grandchildren. And then came Nechama Zissel, who was then about 6 months old. And a few weeks after that, she passed away.
No, but we had a photo taken.
But we had a photo taken of 5 generations, which is, and I mean, we're not even ultra-Orthodox.
Well, they are.
Yeah, a little help from them.
But my mom, she died 6 months after. She still held the baby for me a few times. And I just feel that my life's gone fast, very quickly, but during this time, I've never been deprived of any displeasure. We've had our ups and downs, but very proud of my children, what they've become, and just look forward to their lives being forever happy, healthy, and enjoying their children. And I love them all, and just wish for them the best that life can give any day.
You know, I can still remember when my mom took me to high school, my first day at high school, and the principal was Brett, that was his name, a real wasp. And she said, Mr. Brett, my son, Reuven, or Roy, people call him, and when she spoke with this accent, I wanted the earth to open up and swallow me. Comes 1977, we arrive in Atlanta, and we put Gavin in the Epstein school. And I do a carpool. And after about 2 weeks, Gavin says to me, because all the kids are laughing at my South African accent, Gavin says to me, Daddy, rather don't talk. It came complete circle. Complete circle.
So Roy, what's it like to have the last name Cobb when you live so close to Cobb County, and there was this guy named Ty Cobb who was a pretty notorious baseball player?
My dad's name, in fact, I've got my original birth certificate. Reuben Kobylanski.
Ah.
With a K.
With a K. K-O-B-Y-L-A-N-S-K-I. And my dad's mother died about 6 months after I was born. And people couldn't pronounce his Kobylanski. So he abbreviated it to Cobb after his mother passed away. He didn't want to do it while she was alive. And this attorney, I still met him and gave him hell. I said, why do you put C-O-B-B? You should have put K-O-B. Because when I arrive in Atlanta, I lift up the phone and they hear Roy Cobb. And then then people started calling me Leroy Cobb because I heard I'm from Africa.
Oh, Leroy.
And I remember that we arrived about 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah and didn't know what shul to go to. And we met a South African who was a member of the AA, so we went to the AA. Rini and the kids loved it because there's a lot of English there. And the people there, they could be the same Jewish faces in the Johannesburg shul, which is Orthodox, modern Orthodox, but the men and women are sitting together, whereas in South Africa the men were downstairs and the women were upstairs, and until they opened their mouths with a southern accent, yeah, come back here. It was a cultural shock. I still remember driving around the highway, and you know, in South Africa and England, the last letter of the alphabet is Z. And I couldn't understand what is EZ exit. It took 3 years to work out EZ exit.
And another thing about us, Dave, is we've had the privilege of being members of almost every synagogue in Atlanta.
Yeah, every shul. We started off at AA. It lasted when Rini and the kids went back to Johannesburg to meet her parents, which was about 6 weeks after we arrived. Boom, I was out of that shul. Then I went to Beth Jacob with.
Well, that's where we met David.
Yeah, and Beth Jacob was Haredim, you know.
No, it wasn't
Not at that time.
Not at that time.
Okay.
It was just
Very nice show.
No, but we were there for about 8 years. And then
Gavin was bar mitzvah.
the rabbi wouldn't say a prayer for Israel.
Oh.
Because Mashiach hasn't
so
come
then we
yet.
left. Then we left
Mashiach
there.
hasn't
And
come
then we
yet.
We went on
went.
to Orve.
And then from there we went to
Sephardic.
Oivei Shalom. Oivei Shalom,
We couldn't
please.
understand the rabbi.
Okay, but also Oivei Shalom lasted a few years. But you know, when you're walking up to read the Torah, everybody's shouting you, Chazak, Chazak, Chazak. and I was tipped from my saying, up yours and up yours.
But Daddy, why did you go to Orbe? Because Rabbi Shai was from Rhodesia.
Yeah.
So I have a question,
Yeah.
big question. So the date today is what, the 26th of February 2019. So let's just say it's now 2039 and one of your great-grandchildren is watching this video.
Yeah.
What sage advice can you give them, principles to guide them in their lives?
Be honest, be tolerant, be fair. As Hillel said, love thy neighbor as I love thyself. And also, of course, in Einan Eli Mili, if I am not for myself, who is? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? Just get on and do it, what you believe is right and fair. Do it.
Beautiful. That's a great
I'll tell you
way.
a quick story. We're always
Sure.
talking about the different synagogues. Well, the second synagogue they were at was Beth Jacob, which is where I grew up. And my mom had told me on a particular Shabbat, she said, there's a new family that moved in town from South Africa, so make sure that you meet them. So I went to shul that day, and I came home, and my mom asked me, did you meet the new family? And I said, Mom, there were no black people in shul. That's what we thought South Africans were.
That's fantastic.
And Sam, you had the similar thing with the cob when you got engaged. Sidney Feldman was
So-
very distressed.
So we got engaged and we went out to dinner one night and I introduced
I don't think
Shelley.
we were engaged yet.
I think we were
Oh.
because I introduced Shelley to Aunt Clara and Uncle Sidney and everybody and said, "That's Shelley Cobb, we're engaged." And they were like, "That's nice, very nice." So we went and sat down. Then we hear, "Oh!" And then they sent us wine over because they had met Roy and Reedy earlier in the Atlanta community, and then they realized who they were. First, they thought I was burying somebody, from South Georgia.
I remember when we went to see a family in Baltimore, and this fella, he owned a bottle store. What do you call it?
Liquor
store.
Liquor
A liquor store.
A liquor store. And he, the name's Cobb, and Rini was related to them. And he talks to his wife in Yiddish, and he says, it happens sometimes. What can you do? She made the goy. And I kept quiet. And after about 5 minutes, I started speaking to them in Yiddish. He nearly had an accident.
I like the story of when Gavin was going to Epstein School when you first got here. And they're talking in front of you, like, what kind of education do they have? They're from a third world country. Is that?
Oh, yeah.
Hebrew.
This
In
is
Hebrew.
Zvi Shapiro was the principal.
No names.
And what's his name?
Doesn't matter.
Teacher.
Oh, Alon.
Alon.
Wurzburger.
Alon.
Oh, no.
Alon was, she's on the right of me, just under the chuppah. The woman always stands to the right of the chosn. Not the chatan, the chosn. The kalo.
All right, now he's your witness. You can question.
Roy, you were asked about the army, which was probably one of the biggest achievements of your life.
Yeah, madam. Yeah, as I said, we had this, we had the Student Zionist Organization on the campus at University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, which is abbreviated as WITS. About 60% of that university was Jewish, although we comprised maybe only 12% of the white population in Johannesburg. There was in law, in arts, in architecture, medicine, was all mainly, majority were Jewish, except in engineering, because it was mining engineering. And that Jews never did mining engineering. Okay, so I was president of the Student Zionist Organization, like I was at the high school when I was in the 12th grade as senior. And then the Sinai campaign broke out. And I remember I immediately volunteered to go serve in Israel. And I remember for about 3 weeks my father wouldn't give his consent, and I pleaded with him and threatened him. Eventually he gave in, and so I went to Israel. And I remember in Israel when we came to Lod Lida Airport, as Ben Gurion Airport was then called. They made us sign a document. I said, well, this is in Hebrew, I don't know what it is. Because the Hebrew school we went to, we learned how to daven, but certainly not to understand or to speak. And she says, all right, can you write Hebrew? I said, sure. She gave me, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, no problem. Can you read Hebrew? I said, yeah, if you put the nukudot in, I can read it, no problem. So she said, you mamza, why don't you speak it? I don't know what the hell you're saying. Anyhow, I signed the document, didn't know what it was all about. And when we came to camp, there were other South Africans who came like a few weeks before us. They said, go back, this is terrible, it's like a concentration camp, go back, you'll be sorry. It was too late, we were in the camp. I remember when we were in the camp, there was a fellow, one of us, his name was Ivan Cohen, and in our second week there, they decided to put South Africans on guard duty. And they put this Ivan Cohen at the front gate. A gate in Hebrew is Sha'ar. And there were 1,200 basic training soldiers in the camp, about 600 women, 600 men. And the officer was in the center of the camp, and about this Ivan is put on guard duty from 1 to 3 in the morning with an Israeli. So the Israeli says to him, look, Ivan, you be on guard here from 1 to 2 and I'll be from 2 to 3. I'll sleep when you want and you sleep when I want. Okay, fine. Then he gets a call, Alo Sha'ar. He says, Ze lo Sha'ar, ze Ivan. Then I don't know if today, but then they thought they're talking on the phone, but it doesn't matter. The further you're away from the phone, the more they got to scream. And he was screaming, Alo Sha'ar, Alo. Anyhow, he comes charging down. He sees this crazy South African who doesn't understand a word of Hebrew, and he sees Israeli fast asleep. So he says to him, Mishpat. Mishpat means court martial. So Ivan Gathing says, okay, you can go. So it's Lala Tov Toda Rabah. Anyhow, for the next 4 weeks, I never put any South Africans on guard duty. And I got memory. You only remember the funny parts, you don't remember the difficult parts. I can still remember the song.
Wow. Wow. Tell me what you admire the most about your husband.
His intellect, his love for Judaism. He was just a sexy guy in those days.
What do you mean in those days?
He was actually gorgeous. I'll show you a picture later. No, he was just everything about him. He was a lawyer and he was just special.
So how would I describe my father? I would say a very principled man, a man's man, very comfortable in his own skin, no airs, he is who he is, and it's very refreshing. And as I look back now as a 51-year-old, it's really unique, very unwavering in his opinions, doesn't go with the wind, and like my sister said, has really been the rock of the family. Been times that things look very bleak for me, and he was always there to hold my hand. We actually went into business together 23 years ago after I was fired from a job, and he took me aside. He says, no more jobs for you, we're going to buy a business together. And it would have never happened without his support and his belief in me and my belief in him. And it's just really special to have a father who is who he is and is comfortable in his own skin.
Great.
Gavin, talk about your trip.
First of all, like my mom said, very intellectual, really a walking encyclopedia. Great interest in history, Judaism, lives in the shtetl. I think he doesn't leave the shtetl. He's still there. Huge interest in that. Just always learning, always reading, diverse topics. And I've been actually taking some courses with him at the Jewish Community Center where I take courses every Wednesday. And I've been in a few classes with him. Now he's very smart and he has good things to say, but he doesn't have much of a filter. So I used to sit in class and just sit and hope that the next question was going to be, not going to embarrass me. But no, in the end it didn't, and also got a lot of feedback from people who really are amazed at what he knows, and he's not afraid to speak his mind, which is a great thing. I mean, it can be embarrassing to me, but I think it's really a person of conviction and stands by what he believes, no matter what. And I think he also hasn't ever cared about what people think about him. And I find that I'm envious of that. I mean, I'm starting to outgrow it now in my 50s, but he's never cared about that, and I think that's, I admire that.
He's not opinionated at all. I mean, never has an opinion. He's very quiet about how he feels. Very mild-tempered as well.
Yeah.
Hence the red hair now, which is gray. But there's one person I never ever wanted to make angry when I was a child, and that was my dad. Oh my God. My mom, fine. She could scream at me. She could do whatever she wanted. It was fine. If my dad so much as just yelled at me, I would cry. And that was it. It was over with. Daddy shouted at me. It's unfair. And I also remember when I was a little girl, he used to like threaten us with his belt. You remember, Jody, again? He'd take his belt and he would just like, hit it on the bed and it would make this noise. I'd be like, oh! Of course, he never touched me with a belt. I've never ever touched my skin, but that was like, okay, fine. And my mom would say, just wait till your father comes home. Just wait. And I'd be like, no, please don't tell Daddy. Don't tell Daddy. But the rock of this family, like seriously amazing. When I think that now I'm 54 years old, how old were you, Daddy, when we immigrated?
42.
42 years old, very accomplished in his profession, successful, just, had all the security he could want in every way. Uprooted his entire family just to give us a future and have us all be together as a unit, which we are now. I think to myself, how could I ever do that with my children? Leave a country and my family of my comfort and familiarity and go to a new country where you've nothing, you're starting over. You don't know people don't know you, they don't know your history. How could you do this? But yet he did it. We never felt insecure. He always made us feel we could do this, we're going to do this, always empowered us. Any time that I've had like some major issues, and I've had a few in my life, he was there. And I was like, Daddy, this is what I've done. And like, so what? You'll get through this. You'll be okay. He always made me know that he's okay. And as long as he's there, I know I'm okay.
Oh, that's so nice.
So tell us about your earliest childhood memories.
I would say I was fearless and foolish. I can remember we went to Gede. It was like in the morning we used to walk to, no such thing as pools, car pools and that sort of thing. We had a walk. We had a walk to elementary school, about 1.5 miles there, 1.5 miles back, and came home at about 2 o'clock. 3 o'clock I had a walk again, another mile there and another mile back from Gede, or as they called it, Tamatoga. And I can remember the rabbi there, his name was Baruch Rabinovitz. We used to call him Rabbi Rabinovitz. And I don't know how I didn't give him a heart attack. I can remember certain incidents, like on November the 5th was Guy Fawkes Day, in the British Commonwealth. That's when they Guy Fawkes in about the 17th century tried to blow up the House of Parliament and they stopped him. So they have like July, you have July the 4th, you had all the crackers and everything else on November the 5th. And I remember the day before, Ram used to say, Reuven, he called me Reuven, he didn't call me Roy, Reuven. He says, Reuven, you don't have to come to Gede tomorrow. He was East European Jew. I said, no, I wouldn't miss Gede for anything, not at all. And I came to Gede, and he looked at me and he's thinking, now what the heck's he going to do to me? And I remember he had these big crackers that you set the fuse and it took about a minute before it hit the thing. And under the, you had the desk with the top lid. And I put it underneath there. And he was concentrating. Then all of a sudden, boom, he never hit the sea. And then, of course, I remember climbing the roof of the shul, which was a corrugated iron roof. It was about 40 feet high. It's about, 4 stories high. I don't know how I did it, but I climbed up, sat on the top, and he came out and he says, Reuven, come down. And I said to him, Rabbi, come fetch me. And he quickly walked away, he didn't want to look at it. And I climbed down. I don't know how the heck I did it. I didn't fall off, but I climbed down. There was another incident I remember in going to camp, Zionist youth camp. I must have been 9 or 10, and I'm talking must have been just off the walk, about 46, 47. And you know, they had the coaches then, where verandas at the on each side. I know you must have seen it in the movies. And what happened is, we went through the Karoo, which is like the prairies over here. And it's 1,000 miles from Johannesburg to Cape Town, where we used to go for summer vacation. And I remember about 600 miles of that was this prairie. And I remember climbing up, walking along the roof. I mean, if I didn't get, you know, they were all coal trains, steam trains. I mean, it could have hit me in the eye if the train swerved slightly. That was just go down. And I walked about halfway, and then I climbed through a window. And when I climbed through the window, there were girls sitting there, and they slapped my face. Anyhow, that was,
How did your parents deal with you?
God alone knows.
You went to boarding school, didn't
Tell
you?
them
Did you go
about
to boarding
school.
school?
Huh? Oh, yeah, then I was in 7th grade, or 8th grade, and they decided, look, can't handle him, we've got to send him to boarding school. Boarding school was in King Williamstown, which was about 800 miles away from Johannesburg. And I remember I went there, and there wasn't a place in the boarding school, but there was, I stayed in the widow of a former teacher in her house. And I was very unhappy, very unhappy. One day I decided that it's enough. I walked down to the station and I bought a ticket to Johannesburg. I think it costs the equivalent of about $4 in those days. And anyhow, I get the train about 60 miles to the main East London Johannesburg line. And I sit on the train and the train doesn't move. What? Doesn't move. Then I see a teacher walks into the compartment. He says, come with me. Apparently the woman who sold me the ticket in King Williamstown went and found the school and said, I bought a ticket. This was like 8 o'clock in the morning when I should be at school. And anyhow, I came back and it was a very humiliation. They were all having lunch. The principal looks at me and makes me, from the platform, walk down where all the kids are sitting. Well, that was it. I then wrote to my parents. I said, look, I promise you the world. I'll be a good boy under this. They brought me home. Thank God.
I've got a question, but it goes back to like 70 years ago, your bar mitzvah time, when you were 13, it's 1949. When we were growing up in the 60s, we started to see, you know, learn our love for Israel and about the Holocaust. So what was it like in that part of the world, the late 40s, early 50s? When you're hearing the stories of the Holocaust.
You know, I can remember I must have been about 1945 at the end of the war. I was about 9 years old. And in the movie house, at the end of the movie, they asked all the kids under 21 to please leave the theater because they were showing the first documentary taken by the British of the concentration camps, of these tractors clearing these bodies and so on. And I didn't leave. I hid behind, like, you know, the second half of the theatre, behind the curtain, and when everybody was out and the lights went off, I then parted the curtains and I watched this, and I'll never ever forget the impression it left on me to see these bodies and these tractors and bulldozers. It just left a terrible, terrible impression on me to this very day. And I think that's when I started taking an interest in the Holocaust. I remember my mother telling me that she got a letter from her sister Esther in Haifa, Israel, that one of the survivors from the shtetl, Bryansk, had arrived in Haifa, probably illegally, because the British wouldn't let the Jews in, and told her there were no survivors whatsoever of her family. I mean, I didn't know what a grandfather was, I didn't know what a grandmother was, I didn't know what a cousin was, a niece, a nephew. I didn't know any of it at all. There were no survivors whatsoever. My grandfather, Akiva Skurnik, he went to the States, I think, in about 1908. I found that, I'm interested in genealogy, I found it on the list of the New York arrivals. And he then left in about 1912 to go back to Bryansk, because he called America a Treifa Medina. He was very, very from being a Cohen, and he of course ended up in Treblinka. He went, I can remember when my mother passed away, I was at camp, and I went to a place about 20 miles south on the beach, and two friends of mine came up to fetch me, and they said, your mother's had an accident. You need to go back to Johannesburg. An accident, so, and they held my, the one driving, the other one held my hand, and when we came back to camp, my brother Charlie was coming with a friend of his, Joe Alexander, to come fetch me, to take me to the airport in Cape Town. And I went into my tent to pack up, and then I came back to the office in the camp, and I heard this one fellow, I remember his name was Michael, saying that Roy Cobb's mother got killed in a motor accident. I'll never forget the shock that I had. I never realized she'd been killed.
How old were you?
Huh?
How old were you?
I was, I just finished senior year. I was 17. 17, and anyhow, when we got on the plane, nobody would give up a seat on the plane. There was only one seat available. So the captain of the plane allowed one of us to sit in the cockpit for half the time and the other one on the other seat. And I remember sitting in the cockpit and putting on the headphones and listening to the news, and I heard the name, Mrs. Cobb was killed in a motor accident in Standerton, which is about 100 miles from Johannesburg. And I remember walking into to our house, and my dad was there crying bitterly and saying in Yiddish, I killed your mother, I killed your mother. I'll never forget that.
Because he was driving.
And then I remember when my dad died, he had a heart attack, and he fell on the floor, and nobody would pick him up. Our two brothers were there, and I came there, and we were scared to lift him. And then the doctor came, Dr. Mach, and he said, no, it's okay, you can lift him up into the bed. And then the ambulance came, and they took him in a stretcher, and they were taking him out the front door head first. And we made them turn around. You don't take him head first. You take him feet first, because if you take him head first, I think it was a superstition or tradition amongst Jews that you only take a corpse head first. And they took him to hospital, Rand Clinic, I remember the name. And then I remember about a day or two later, I came early in the morning before going to work. It must have been about 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And he was lying there and he couldn't speak. And I sat next to him and I held his hand and I said, relax, relax, Daddy. And I then got up and walked away. To this day I regret it, because a few hours later he was dead. He died of a heart attack, And then one of the nurses lifted up the sheet and I saw his face. And for about a year thereafter, that's all I could remember about my dad was that face of his when he was dead. And what else?
So one of the art pieces is a piece of Torah scroll. It's very impressionable. I think everyone wants to know what the story is. So what is the story behind that?
I went just after in 1976, that was the height of communist rule in Poland. I had to settle a case. I was an attorney. And the case I had to settle was a woman who had been shot to death by her husband, a Pole also, at the Carlton Hotel, in the lobby. And as we were leaving our house, we were going to Reni's parents for Friday night meal, Shabbat. The phone rang, and I didn't answer it. We closed the door, we went. Next morning, I got a call from the police to say that they've got two corpses. I don't know who they are, but they did find could identify them. Anyhow, before I could even leave the house, I got a phone call from a reporter who says he found a matchbox in the woman's hand with my telephone number there. 435820, I still remember it. And he then came over and he said, will you go identify it? So I went down and I had to wait about half an hour, I think, until they cleaned the bodies up, but they were all stiff at peculiar angles. I recognized her and I recognized her husband or boyfriend, whatever. And so she left he had an investment, some money which was in Switzerland. So I had to go to Switzerland to see how much there was. And it was something like $2,000. And I then met her heirs, that's her mother, and I think she had 6 or 7 brothers and sisters, at the Swiss embassy, because I didn't want to meet them. They told me I've got to go to the advocate's office where all the advocates, lawyers under the communist regime had the offices. Instead I took it to the Swiss embassy, and the Swiss embassy, I had an affidavit which I had signed in Johannesburg to the Swiss bank to say that I'm authorized. And then we went to the Swiss embassy and I called each one separately. She left over half of the estate to the one sister, and the others she left it to her mother and the other brothers and sisters. So I called them each separately and told them what it was, and ultimately it was all invested in Switzerland. Then when the others heard that she got half the estate, they immediately said they want the money back in Poland, so it was sent to Poland and it was worth nothing.
Did you ask about the Torah
Does
scroll?
How about the Torah scroll?
Does that answer your question?
Okay. The Torah scroll.
But that's what got you to Poland.
When I went to Poland in 1976, I got hold of a driver who had a Mercedes Benz and who spoke English, and he took me to Bryansk, and I didn't know what was what, and showed me that this is where there was a synagogue, and this is where another synagogue. And he said there's an old couple over here who lived in the Jewish quarter, might be able to tell you something. So I went in there, and I had this fellow who could translate from Polish to English and vice versa. And she told me that, she took me around, said there was a synagogue there and a synagogue there, and this is where your grandfather Akiva, or they called him Kiva Skurenik lived. And this is the liquor store that he had, because a Jew wasn't allowed to own any liquor stores, but he could rent it out. So he rented it out to a Pole, and that is my first indication there. Then afterwards, after the fall of communism, I went back in 1991. Met a fellow there who, about 3 weeks before I came, there was an elderly Gentile woman. When she died, she was a widow living by herself. They threw out everything on the street, including what was in the basement. And he happened to walk past, and he recognized the Hebrew letters. So he gathered them up, and when I came about 3 weeks later, he asked me if I wanted it. I said, sure, thanks very much. I put it in a paper parcel, and I flew back to New York. In fact, that's where your dad got married there to his, David's father was a widow, and he remarried, and I took it back there. And when I came to Atlanta, I took it to Emory, and it took them about 3 months to create the moist and straighten it out. And that's the Torah scroll that I've got. I then asked one of the cantors over here, Isaac Goodfriend, who was at the AA, if he could tell me what it's about. And he said, yes. He says, that part that's burnt out is the part that is read between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And reading the history of Bryansk, I knew right away that he was a Cohen, therefore, and I confirmed that he went to what they called the Naya Shul, the new shul, and he obviously must be in the Cohen. This is what he must have read. He called the first one to be called up. And I just couldn't believe it. And that's the story of the Torah scroll.
So one of the most memorable trips, actually 2 memorable trips with my father. First one was in 1992 when he took me back to Johannesburg. I was 24 years old at the time, had a very basic understanding of what he had sacrificed to immigrate to this country. And he took me there and he showed me all the material assets that he had left behind. And it was the first time I really had an understanding of what he truly had walked away from for our benefit. That continues to leave an impression upon me as I get older and as I raise my own children. How material things can come and go, but it's relationships and it's education, those are things that stand the test of time. The other trip that left an impression on me was in 1998 when we went to Poland and Lithuania. We went to Bryansk and we went to Bryansk and Bielsk, which Bryansk is where his mother comes from, my grandmother, and Bielsk, which is where his father comes from. And once I saw these places, it really, everything started making more sense to me about my father, about his upbringing, about the home he grew up in. And it just, some of the missing pieces for me began to make more sense. And that was a really very meaningful trip. Another trip, one more trip I want to share is in 2009, he went with me to Germany, where we picked up a car and we drove around Germany for 10 days. That was also very interesting because it was in restaurants, he was ordering in Yiddish, and they were like, they could understand a few words here and there. But it was very interesting to hear him speaking Yiddish to a German waiter. But that was a very good trip as well.
Well, when Jodie was born, she was the most beautiful baby. In fact, the nurse at the Florence Nightingale nursing home, it's in Johannesburg, took her and showed everybody, all the new mothers and so on, and the other nurses, what a magnificent baby she was. She was just outstanding. Shelley, she came out a bit blue, and my dad said that she had some good features. And when Gavin was born, I mean, all of a sudden they asked me to come in. I had no intention of going in. And they put on a gown, and they told me to hold the oxygen next to Rene's nose. And of course, I kept on dropping it all the time. And then the doctor told me to come around as the baby was being born. And I was the first one to see that Gavin was a boy.
All right, tell me how and where and when you met your wife.
Oh, that's a Geschichte. But what happened is, I had already come back from the Israeli army. I was there during the time of the Sinai campaign. I had graduated my lower degree, BCom, which is equivalent to the BBA, and I was studying law for my LLB, that's a JD. And my sister Gertrude was, her boyfriend was Michael, and they ultimately got married, but she was very friendly with his sister Rosalind. And Rosalind was very friendly with Rene. So she brought them over, she came with Rene, and as soon as I saw Rene, I thought, not bad, not bad. And afterwards, I asked my sister, who's that baby? And lo and behold, I get a phone call. Would I like to join her for the prom? You know, she was then in 11th grade. I thought it was a joke. So I said, sure.
Today would be a crime.
She told me afterwards that her friends dared her to. Anyhow, we went to the prom, and I remember I wore my brother's Charlie's suit, because I never had one of my own. And I had, I think it was red leather shoes, almost red. And I told her I haven't got shoes. I'll have to come with the red shoes. Anyhow, I went to the dance, and then it was history.
How long from the dance till you got married?
About 2 years.
That's pretty quick.
2 years, yeah, you know, I wasn't quite sure. I remember I never proposed to her. I told her that I intentions of going back to Israel, entering politics and becoming the Prime Minister. So I said to her, how'd you like to become the First Lady of the land? That's how I proposed. And then I went, of course, you know, you've got to ask the parents' permission. I brought her back home, I don't know what time it was, 10, 11 o'clock. And I went up and said, I guess I must have been hesitating, I don't know. I asked them if I can get married to her. And they were so excited because her dad used to ask Rennie, no, what's happening? Leave him alone, there are plenty of fish in the sea. Anyhow, we got married, And yeah, lived happily ever after.
Did you ever talk about the army? The Israeli
That's
army?
what I was about to ask him. So you're born in South Africa, right?
In
But
Johannesburg, South Africa.
how did you end up in the Israeli army?
Well, I was a very, always Zionistically. In fact, until the age of 5, I didn't even know English. I just spoke Yiddish because my parents and their friends all spoke Yiddish. And I knew the other bays before I knew the ABC. And at the age of 5, we had moved to another suburb, a little better than where we were living before, like the lower east end of Johannesburg. And there I... Oh, what did I want to say? Lower east...
How did you go into
Israel, like why how?
Yeah, how did you?
And then at the age of 5, at the shul we went to, which was Kensington Shul, it's the name of another suburb in Johannesburg, the shul was the center of everything. I mean, I went to a public elementary school where there was terrible anti-Semitism. You know, that was at the time of the King David Hotel being blown up by the Irgun, Menachem Begin, and the British hated the Jews, and the English, I went to an English-speaking elementary school, used to tell me, Jew boy, go back to Palestine, Jew boy, and had fights almost every day. I remember in maybe 5% of the school was Jewish, if that. And then, of course, we had on the other side, the Afrikaners, about 60% of the white population of South Africa in those days, never counted non-whites, were Afrikaans speaking, and the great majority of them were part of the apartheid government supporters who were pro-Nazi. Before the war, they were pro-Nazi, and during the war, they were pro-Nazi. The Prime Minister, Foster, in fact, was arrested and sent to jail for 3 years for blowing up a post office in one of the towns. And the first thing they did when they came into power in 1948, on that morning, they released a Nazi Afrikaner who had been arrested and sentenced for life. They immediately released him, and of course the Jews were very, very concerned. We had on the one side pro-Nazi, on the other side we had the British, and then we had the blacks who were also anti-white, and we were regarded as part of the white population. And I can still remember in elementary school, we used to sing Christian hymns. And I remember there was an ex-serviceman, his name was Mr. Morton, and I refused to sing it. And he came up to me and put his ear next to my mouth, and he said, "Why aren't you singing?" I said, "Because I'm Jewish." He said, "Sing." I said, "Would you sing if I was a Mohammedan and the Prophet? Would you sing for the Prophet Muhammad?" And he walked away. I mean, I was in 11th or 12th grade then. No, not 11th. I was in standard 5, it's 7th grade.
So I understand you have a bar mitzvah anniversary coming up soon.
Yeah.
What do you remember from the first bar mitzvah?
Fortunately, the Sunday after, they made a recording. And I've got that recording, I've put it on a CD. But unfortunately, I got the brochas there and so on, but I didn't do the Haftorah on that. I did, the Haftorah that I did, there were 20 verses, and I only recorded the last 3. And Yossi knew, the Rabbi Bet Tefillah said you cannot have David, your son-in-law, sing the first 17 and you come sing the last 3. So that was finished, finito. Then David tried to teach me the other impossible. I haven't got an ear for music. I couldn't do it. And not only then, we sang in the Ashkenazi, not the Sephardic.
Right.
because this was just like, still, my bar mitzvah was about 10 months after Israel's independence. And I remember it was in a Baruch Atah, he said a Baruch Atah. And in fact, I asked David, because I made a Hebrew speech as well. I didn't know what the hell it meant. But it is also, it's recorded in Ashkenazi Hebrew. I've been asking him all the time, no. He says, no, look, he can't quite make it out on the record. He's asked simple, your twin, to help him out. And then, of course, I did the Kabbalah Shabbat. L'cho dodi likras kalo b'nei Shabbos nekabelo uchi shidaberi, etc. I did the Friday night service, the Kabbalah Shabbat. Well, the eldest one is Adam. Adam is named after Rene's late dad, whose name was, is he named after your dad or after Ephraim?
No, David.
No, after Rene's dad, whose name was David Hirsch. But as his father was already David, in Jewish tradition, in Ashkenazi tradition anyhow, you can't use the same name. So we decided, okay, Adam, the first man, if we couldn't name the first Jew. So he became Adam Hirsch. He got married, he's the only grandchild that's married so far, and he married Miriam Leah. Miriam Leah was from Dallas, Texas. And they have 3 children, which is our great-grandchildren. And the name is Nechama Zissel, Avrom Ephraim, and Sarah Wichner. In other words, we're going back 150 years now. It's no more John and Tom and Andrew. It's now back to the shtetl names. The whole cycle's coming through. Then we have Adam was king for about 2 years, and then Talia,
Rachel.
Talia Mazal Tov Siona. That's a Hebrew name, or just we call her Talia. She was the second one to be born, and Adam was no more king. She arrived on the scene. And I remember we were there, we were convinced it was going to be a boy, and we were making preparations for the bris, and Sam came out and said, forget about the bris, it's a girl. Then the third one to arrive was Shana, Shoshana Varda. She was named after David Frankel's mother. And her English name was Shana Maidel. Then the next one to arrive was
David.
there was Shana.
David.
And David.
David Fellman.
David Feldman.
Oh, David Feldman, yeah. Also, he's also named after Rene's dad, David Hirsch. Feldman. He made a history because he happened to be downtown near the CNN there when there was a demonstration against Israel on the one side of the road and pro-Israel on the other side. And David had an Israeli flag wrapped around him, and a Swedish guy approached him and he said objectively, he says, do you agree that the Arabs have got no rights? And he said, do you believe that it's a religious state? And he said, it's a Jewish state with the highest moral values of Judaism. I do not want to see my friends kill the Arabs, and I don't want the Arabs to kill my friends and family. And this, I think, got 3 million views
It went viral.
overnight. And then it appeared again in Israel, where they had the subtitles there in Hebrew. So he really, this put him on the map, and he became a big noise. I mean, he was at the University of Georgia. He did his equivalent of BBA, and he then went up to New York, and he's still there now. And there was somebody coming to the Israeli embassy, and they didn't know how to talk to this person, so they took him from New York down to Washington to the Israeli embassy for him to explain it and so on. Then after David came
Ariel.
Ariel. Ariel is Deborah Chlavna. Why Deborah Chlavna? Because in Judges 4:4, Judges verse 4, chapter 4, verse 4, it says that Deborah haya ishti shel lapidut, and that's got two different translations. The one is that Deborah was the wife of Lapidut, but the other meaning could be that Deborah was like lightning. In our Lapidut, Lapid is a light, lightning. And so Ariel, we gave the name in Hebrew as Deborah Chlavna. Chlavna was my father's Yiddish name. I can tell you a whole story about his name, but anyhow, then after Ariel came
Justin.
Justin.
Justin. Now Justin is also, his Hebrew name is Lapidut Chlavna. Justin Lawton. Lapidut Chlavna. Okay. He is brilliant. He is now at Georgia Tech. 4 out of 4, 100%. They can't believe it. He's a freshman there now. He was waitlisted for MIT, and fortunately his parents managed to influence him to go to Georgia Tech. And the last one to arrive is
No,
No, not the last.
Right.
No,
Micah, I
Micah.
beg your pardon, Micah, Michael Akiva. He is named after my grandfather, Akiva. And his Hebrew name is Michael, but he chose one of the lesser prophets, lesser being not such a long portion, not lesser in importance, whose name was Micah. And that's Micah. He is obsessed with baseball. He's got a
So
scholarship.
is this guy.
He's got a scholarship to Woodstock.
Worcester.
He's going to sing as well.
To Worcester, which is very close to Cleveland, Ohio. And he got a scholarship, not because of the baseball, but for academic reasons. And he got a scholarship, I think, of $30,000 or something. He's a senior now at the Weber School, and he's off to Worcester.
Yep.
Wooster. When in August? In August this year.
Last one.
And then we get Nicole. Nicole is the youngest of Gavin and Melinda's kids, and her Hebrew name is Davida. Davida being named after Renee's dad and Melinda's grandfather. And she is now a junior. Sophomore at Weber School. וזה הכל, זה ganz like משפחה.
And their characters, what are they as people?
What people?
Your grandchildren, what are they? What is their personalities? What do you love them
Personality,
for?
yeah. Adam is a very, very good businessman. Really, I remember at the age of 3, he was selling bubble gum, from that machine. And he thought he heard that the one girl was very poor. She actually came from a very wealthy family, but he heard she's poor. So he gave her bubble gum for nothing. Then there was, and he's a very good businessman today. I mean, he's with nothing. He's now investing in property, buying it, renovating it, and selling it. Then we come to
Tally.
to Tali. Tali Mazal Tov Siona. Tali.
Why is she called Mazel Tov Siona?
Huh?
Why Siona?
We call it Siona because she happened to be born. If Yom Ha'atzmaut is on a Shabbat, then they have it on Thursday, not on Friday because it's Erev Shabbat, but on a Thursday. And she was actually born on the Thursday, which was the 4th of the year. So that's why we use the name Siona. There's no Zion.
Can you rattle off all the great-grandchildren in one name after the other? Yeah. Can you do it? Can you do it?
Yeah, ready?
Let me
go.
hear.
Adam.
Tally.
Go, you can
Take
do
two. Do it again.
it. Go on, you can do it. Go, you can do it.
Let's see if you can do it.
Go by family.
Pardon?
Go by family.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, do us.
Do Jody and David
Then-
and us, and then go.
Rattle them off. Any order you want.
Okay. Adam, Tali, Shane, Ariel, Micah, Justin, Nicole, Odachad.
David.
David. Zehu.
And greats.
And the great.
And the greats?
Yeah, the greats.
The?
What about the
Great
greats?
grandchildren.
And they were talking to each other in Hebrew. And he's saying, look, a South African kid, does he, what's his knowledge of Hebrew? And he said, I don't know, South African, what do you expect? And then I interrupted them in Hebrew, because I speak Hebrew. And I said, how dare you do it? Where is your respect? You think I don't understand when you talk about my child like that? I got such a pride.
Well,
Right out of education.
this is great. I think we got some good stuff.
And Gavin, well, we're not talking about Gavin now, we're talking about the grandchildren. And then came the beautiful Shane that was born with highlights. And they are today. Adam runs a big company. Talia is a speech and hearing specialist. Shane is just mentally healthy. The soil has to be rich. That's a philosophy.
Let me just see this.
Person that's running to name all of the kids, grandkids, Hebrew names.
That's true. That's true.
I didn't realize that in the name of